hope you haven't forgotten that while all this was going on, I was stuck behind the screen on my hands and knees with one eye glued to the crack. And I don't know how long I had been there, but it seemed like forever. The worst part of it was not being allowed to cough or make a sound, and knowing that if I did, I was as good as dead. And all the way through, I was living in constant terror that one of the witches in the back row was going to get a whiff of my presence through those special nose holes of hers. My only hope as I saw it was the fact that I hadn't washed for days. That and the never-ending excitement and clapping and shouting that was going on in the room. The witches were thinking of nothing except the Grand High Witch up there on the platform and her great plan for wiping out all the children of England. They certainly weren't sniffing around for a child in the room. In their wildest dreams, if witches have dreams, that would never have occurred to any of them. So I kept still, and I prayed. And the Grand High Witch's dreadful gloating song was over now, and the audience was clapping madly and shouting, "Brilliant! Sensational! Marvelous! You are a genius, oh brainy one! It's a thrilling invention, this delayed action mouse maker. It's a winner!" And the beauty of it is that the teachers will be the ones to bump off the stinking little children. It won't be us doing it. We shall never be caught. "Witches are never caught," snapped the Grand High Witch. "Attention now. I want everybody's attention, for I am about to be telling you what you must do to prepare Formula 86 Delayed Action Mouse Maker." Suddenly there came a great gasp from the audience. This was followed by a hubbub of shrieking and yelling, and I saw many of the witches leaping to their feet and pointing at the platform and crying out, "Mice, mice, mice! She's done it to show us. The brainy one has turned 2 children into mice, and there they are." And I looked up towards the platform, and the mice were there all right, 2 of them running around towards the Grand High Witch's skirts. But these were not field mice or house mice or wood mice or harvest mice. They were white mice, and I recognized them immediately. They were my own little William and Mary. "Mice," said the audience, I'm sorry. "Our leader has made mice to appear out of nowhere. Get the mouse traps, fetch the cheese." I saw the Grand High Witch peering down at the floor and staring with obvious puzzlement at William and Mary. And she bent lower to get a closer look, and then she straightened up and she shouted, "Quiet!" And the audience became silent and sat down. "These mice are nothing to do with me," she shouted. "These mice are pet mice. These mice are quite obviously belonging to some repellent little child in the hotel. A boy it will be, because certainly no girls are keeping a pet mice." "A boy?" cried the witches. "A filthy, smelly little boy? We'll swipe and we'll swizzle and we'll have his stripes for breakfast." "Silence!" said the Grand High Witch, raising her hand. "You know perfectly well you must do nothing to draw attention to yourselves while you are living in this hotel. Let us by all means get rid of this evil-smelling little squirt, but we must do as quietly as possible, for are we not all the most respectable ladies of the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children?" "What do you suggest then, oh brainy one?" they cried out. "How shall we dispose of this small pile of filth?" "They're talking about me," I thought. "These females are actually talking about how to kill me." I began to sweat. "Whoever he is not important," said the Grand High Witch. "Leave him to me. I shall smell him out and turn him into a mackerel and have him dished up for supper." "Bravo!" cried the witches. "Cut off his head and chop off his tail and fry him in hot butter." You can imagine that none of this was making me feel very comfortable. William and Mary were still running around on the platform, and I saw the Grand High Witch aim a swift running kick at William. She caught him right at the point of her toe and sent him flying, and she did the same to Mary, and her aim was extraordinary. She would have made a great football player. Both mice crashed against the wall, and for a few moments they lay stunned. And then they got to their feet, and they scampered away. So she kicked poor little William and poor little Mary, but they were okay. They got up and ran away. "Attention again," the Grand High Witch was saying. "I will now give you the recipe for concocting Formula 86 Delayed Action Mouse Maker. Get out pencils and paper." Handbags were opened all over the room, and notebooks were fished out. "Give us the recipe, oh brainy one," said the audience impatiently. "Tell us the secret." "First," said the Grand High Witch, "I had to find something that would cause the children to become very small very quickly." "And what was that?" said the audience. "That part was simple," said the Grand High Witch. "All you have to do if you are wishing to make a child very small is to look at him through the wrong end of the telescope. So," "Wow, she's a wonder," they said. "Who else would have thought of a thing like that?" "So you are taking the wrong end of the telescope," said the Grand High Witch, "and you boil it until it gets soft." "How long does that take?" "Wow," they asked her. 21 hours of boiling," said the Grand High Witch, "and while this is all going on, you take exactly 45 brown mice, and you chop off their tails with a carving knife, and you fry the tails in hair oil till they are nice and crisp." What do we do with all those mice who have had their tails chopped off? They said. You simmer them in frog juice for 1 hour, said the answer. But listen to me. So far, I've only given you the easy part of the recipe. The really difficult problem is putting it in something that will have a genuine delayed action result. Something that can be eaten by children on a certain day, but which will not start working on them until 9 o'clock the next morning when they arrive at school. So here's the witches taking notes. Those are the tails. There's the frog juice. What did you come up with, Brainy One? They said. Tell us the great secret. The secret, said the Grand High Witch triumphantly, is an alarm clock. An alarm clock, they cried. It's a stroke of genius. Of course it is, said the Grand High Witch. You can set a 24-hour alarm clock today, and exactly 9 o'clock tomorrow it will go off. But we would need 5 million alarm clocks, cried the audience. We will need one for each child. Idiots, said the Grand High Witch. If you are wanting a steak, you do not cook the whole cow. It is the same with an alarm clock. One clock will make enough for 1,000 children. Here's what you do. You set your alarm clock to go off at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Then you roast it in the oven until it is crisp and tender. Are you writing this down? We are, your grandness, we are, they cried. Next, said the Grand High Witch, you take your boiled telescope and your fried mouse tails, and you cook mice and your roasted alarm clock, and all together you put them into the mixer, and then you mix them at full speed. This will give you a nice thick paste. And while the mixture is still mixing, you must add it to the yolk of one gruntel's egg. A gruntel's egg, said the audience. We shall do that. Underneath all the clamor that was going on, I heard one witch in the back row saying to her neighbor, I'm getting a bit old to go bird nesting. Those ruddy gruntles always nest up very high. So you mix in the egg, said the Grand High Witch, and one after the other you also mix in the following items. The claw of a crab cruncher, the beak of a blabber snitch, the snout of a grabble squirt, and the tongue of a cat springer. I trust you are not having any trouble finding those. None at all, they cried out. We will spear the blabber snitch and trap the crab cruncher and shoot the grobble squirt and catch the cat springer in his burrow. So one thing Roald Dahl does, very similar to Dr. Seuss, is they make up words that seem real, like cat springer or grobble squirt, and they make them seem like they're really animals. Excellent, said the Grand High Witch. And then you have mixed everything together in the mixer. You will have the most marvelous looking green liquid. Put one drop, just one titchy drop of this liquid into a chocolate or sweet, and at 9 o'clock the next morning the child who ate it will turn into a mouse in 26 seconds. But one word of warning. Never increase the dose. Never put more than one drop into each sweet or chocolate, and never give more than one sweet or chocolate to each child. An overdose of delayed action mouse maker will mess up the timing of the alarm clock and cause the child to turn into a mouse too early. A large overdose might even have an instant effect. And you wouldn't want that, would you? You wouldn't want the children turning into mice right in your sweet shops. That would give the game away. So be very careful. Do not overdose. The Grand High Witch was starting to talk again. I am now going to prove to you, she said, that this recipe is working to perfection. You understand, of course, that you can set the alarm clock to go off at any time you like. It does not have to be 9 o'clock. So yesterday I am personally preparing a small quantity of the magic formula in order to give you a public demonstration. But I am making one small change in the recipe. Before I am roasting the alarm clock, I am setting it to go off not at 9 o'clock the next morning, but at 3:30 the next afternoon, which means 3:30 this afternoon. And that is precisely in 7 minutes' time. The audience of witches was listening intently, sensing that something dramatic was about to happen. So what am I doing yesterday with this magic liquid? Said the Grand High Witch. I will tell you what I am doing. I am putting one droplet of it into a very squishy chocolate bar, and I am giving this bar to a repulsively smelly little boy who is hanging around the lobby of the hotel. The Grand High Witch paused. The audience remained silent, waiting for her to go on. I watched this repulsive little brute gobbling up the squishy bar of chocolate, and when he had finished, I said to him, Was that good? And he said, It was great. So I said to him, Would you like some more? And he said, Yes. So I said, I will give you 6 more bars of chocolate like that if you will meet me in the ballroom of this hotel at 3:25 tomorrow afternoon. 6 bars, said the greedy little swine. I'll be there. You bet I'll be there. So the stage is set, said the Grand High Witch. The proof in the pudding is about to begin. Do not forget that before I am roasting the alarm clock yesterday, I am setting it for 3:30 today. It is now, she glanced up at her watch, it is now exactly 25 minutes past 3, and the nasty little stinker, who will be turning into a mouse in 5 minutes' time, should at this very moment be standing outside the doors. And by gum, she was absolutely right. The boy, whoever he might be, was already rattling the door handle and banging on the doors with his fist. "Quick," said the Grand High Witch. "Put on your wigs, put on your gloves, put on your shoes." There was a great rustle and bustle of putting on wigs and gloves and shoes, and I saw the Grand High Witch herself reach for her face mask and put it on over that revolting face of hers. It was astonishing how that mask transformed her. All of a sudden she became again a rather pretty young lady. "Let me in," said the boy's voice from behind the doors. "Where are those chocolate bars you promised me? I'm here to collect. Dish 'em out." "He is not only smelly, he is greedy," said the Grand High Witch. "Remove the chains from the doors and let him come in." The extraordinary thing about the mask was that its lips moved quite naturally when she spoke. You really couldn't see it was a mask at all. And one of the witches leapt to her feet and unfastened the chains, and she opened the two huge doors, and then I heard her saying, "Why, hello, little man. How lovely to see you. You've come for your chocolate bars, have you not? They are all ready for you. Do come in." A small boy wearing a white t-shirt and gray shorts and gym shoes entered the room, and I recognized him at once. He was called Bruno Jenkins, and he was staying in the hotel with his parents. I didn't care for him. He was one of those boys who was always eating something whenever you meet him. Meet him in the hotel lobby, he's stuffing sponge cake into his mouth. Pass him in the corridor, he's fishing for potato crisps out of a bag by the fistful. Catch sight of him in the hotel garden, and he's woofing a dairy milk bar, and he had 2 more sticking out of his trouser pocket. What's more, Bruno never stopped bragging about how his father made more money than my father and that they owned 3 cars. But worse than that, yesterday morning, I had found him kneeling on the flagstone of the hotel terrace with a magnifying glass in his hand. And there was a column of ants marching across one of the flagstones, and Bruno Jenkins was focusing the sun through his magnifying glass, and he was roasting the ants one by one. "I like to watch 'em burn," he said. "That's horrible," I said. "Stop doing it." "Let's see you stop me," he said. At that point, I had pushed him with all my might, and he had crashed sideways onto the flagstones. His magnifying glass had splintered into many pieces, and he had leapt up shrieking. "My father's gonna get you for this!" And then he had run off, presumably to find his wealthy dad. And that was the very last time I had seen Bruno Jenkins until now, and I doubted very much that he was about to be turned into a mouse, although I must confess that I was kind of secretly hoping it might happen. Either way, I didn't envy him being up there in front of all those witches. "Darling boy," said the Grand High Witch up from the platform, "I have your chocolates all ready for you." That's Bruno being brought up by the witches. "Do come up here first and say hello to all these lovely ladies." Her voice was quite different now. It was soft and gentle and absolutely dripping with syrup. And Bruno was looking a bit bewildered, a bit confused, and he allowed himself to be led up to the platform where he stood beside the Grand High Witch and said, "All right, where are my 6 bars of chocolate?" And I saw the witch, who had let him in, quietly putting the chain back on the door handles, and Bruno didn't notice this. He was too busy asking for chocolate. "The time is now 1 minute past 3:30, said the Grand High Witch. "What the heck's going on?" Bruno asked. He wasn't frightened, but he wasn't looking exactly comfortable either. "What is this?" he said. "Give me my chocolate." 30 seconds to go, said the Grand High Witch, grabbing Bruno by the arm. Bruno shook himself clear and stared at her, and she stared back at him, smiling with the lips of her mask, and every witch in the audience was just staring at Bruno. 20 seconds, said the Grand High Witch. So remember, she had put the delayed action mouse maker in the candy bar she had given him the day before, and it was set off to go at 3:30, which is 3:30, and right now is about 20 seconds until 3:30. And he's looking at her like, "What are you talking about?" "Give me the chocolate," said Bruno, who became suddenly suspicious. "Give me the chocolate and let me out of here." 15 seconds, said the Grand High Witch. "Will one of you crazy punks kindly tell me what this is all about?" shouted Bruno. 10 seconds, said the Grand High Witch. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have ignition. I could have sworn I heard an alarm clock ringing, and I saw Bruno jump. And he jumped as though someone had stuck a hat pin deep into his bottom, and he yelled, "Ow!" And he jumped so high that he landed on a small table up there in the stage, and he started hopping about on the top of the table, waving his arms and yelling his head off, and then suddenly he became silent, and his whole body stiffened. "The alarm has gone off," said the Grand High Witch. "The mouse maker is beginning to work." She started hopping about on the platform and clapping her gloved hands together, and then she shouted out, This smelly brat, this filthy scum, this horrid little louse will very soon become a lovely little mouse. Bruno was getting smaller by the second, and I could see him shrinking. And now his clothes seemed to be disappearing, and brown fur was growing all over his body, and suddenly he had a tail. And then he had whiskers. And now he had 4 feet. It was all happening so quickly, it was a matter of seconds only. And all at once he wasn't there anymore. A small brown mouse was running around on the tabletop. Look at that metamorphosis. He went from being Bruno to slowly becoming a mouse. Bravo, said the audience. She's done it. It works. It's fantastic. It's colossal. Oh my gosh, you're a miracle, old brainy one. They were all standing up and clapping and cheering, and the Grand High Witch produced a mouse trap from the folds of her dress and started to see it. Oh no, I thought, I don't want to see this. Bruno Jenkins might have been a bit of a stinker, but I really don't want to see him get his head chopped off. That is he, said the Grand High Witch, searching the platform. Where has that little mouse gone to? She couldn't find him. Clever Bruno must have jumped down off the table and scampered off into some corner or even down a small hole. Thank heavens for that. It matters not, said the Grand High Witch. Silence. Sit down.